Hello, my name is Dr. Derek Watson. I'm an Associate Professor at the University of Sunderland, and I'm here today to talk to you about how to survive your doctoral journey. Now, on a positive, approximately 75% of students complete their doctoral journey. Those that don't actually fail. They walk away from the programme, so bear that in mind. So I guess you've thought about it over a period of time. Should you, shouldn't you? And it's a big commitment. Not just in time, money, but a great deal of effort. But it is doable. So what you've really got to think about, whether you're doing a part-time doctoral route over 3 to 7 years, or a full-time route, which is 3 years, you need to have a plan. You need to have a game plan or a technique. Stick to the technique and you'll get through it. There are various definitions on the doctoral journey. I particularly like Dobie's, in which he describes the average PhD is nothing but the transference of bones from one graveyard to another. Now, what do I mean by that? What I'm saying is, looking at that definition, quite a lot of students embark on a PhD, successfully complete, but their thesis sits on a lonely shelf in a library collecting dust. So you really got to think about, why are you doing a doctoral journey? What is the end goal? So if it's with regards to career move or career promotion, you need to bear that in mind throughout. So your subject area has to appeal to a specific market segment. Key technique is planning ahead. And what you've got to think about before you submit your application form, have you done the necessary reading? Have you read around the subject area, breadth and depth with regards to journals and periodicals? Have you identified a potential gap in the market? And can you make a contribution to reduce that gap in the market? And another key area that students quite often forget about is, can they access data? Without data, you're never going to complete your PhD. So you've really got to ask the question, can you realistically source the field research to support your research investigation? And if you can't, my advice is, stop what you're doing, rethink your research area, and then consider once again, can you access the data? Like everything, life is all about balancing work and home life, almost the yin and yang. But when you take on a PhD, you're bringing in the third dimension, work, life, and your PhD. So we need to be careful how we move forward. You have to be realistic. You're not being asked to climb a mountain. You're not asked to join a training course to be in the Special Forces. What you're doing is, you're doing something that is achievable, but it will be achievable if you stick to a plan. Also, never say the F word, the failure word. If you've identified your topic, your research question, your research objectives, and you know that you can access the data, you're starting off on a very positive foot. Equally, it needs to be a family affair. This is very important. You're going to be spending 3 to 7 years studying. So you need to bring your family on board or your partner on board, and to talk to them, keep them updated about your research. And if anything, it'll prepare you for your final Viva, because you'll be so used to describing your research, when it comes to the Viva presentation, you'll feel very confident. So don't forget that. It has to be a family affair. When you're accepted on the programme, you'll be allocated 2 supervisors. Your Director of Studies, which will be the primary lead of your research, but also a co-supervisor. Now remember, when you start off on your doctoral journey, your level of confidence in the subject area may be quite limited. So it'll be a bit like meeting the in-laws with your supervisory team. You will try to be as polite as you can. But then, as you develop your research and you're developing your confidence, 1 or 2 comments from your supervisory team, you may start to question. And my advice to you is, they have been where you are. You haven't been where they are. So take on their advice. So when they're handing back chapters and saying you need to develop, you need corrections, you need to dig deeper, take it on the chin. They are on your side and you need to work with them and take on their advice and get to know their personalities. The structure of the thesis. Now, the structure is very important, like links of a chain between the different chapters. But more importantly, what is the golden thread? The golden thread is your research question. Can you trace your research question throughout your thesis chapters? That is critical. But also, what students quite often forget about is various institutes ask for a final chapter, reflections, i.e., how have you developed over the research journey? And you just need to look at your former photographs when you were an undergraduate or postgraduate student, how you physically changed over a year or over 2 or 3 years. That is nothing to the changes that you experience cognitively. So my advice is, although you want to finish your PhD when you come to the conclusion section, you still have to put in effort for your reflections. And what I would suggest that you do is you keep a log throughout your research journey and you document how you are experiencing, taking on different methodologies, interviewing, analysing, pulling your research together. But certainly do not rush your reflective area. It is critical to completing your PhD, and one which a lot of students overlook, and then they get caught out with corrections or amendments when it comes to the Viva presentation. Also, when you embark on a PhD, you're not going to boil the ocean. So be a minnow. You're going to make a small contribution, but it's going to be important. And work within that framework of research and keep that focus, that vision on your research. What is the golden thread you're trying to prove? What is your contribution? Also, what students don't do, they do not seek help. Now, your first port of call for help is your supervisory team, which I've mentioned. But another important port of call or support is your fellow PhD students. And you have a high correlation of students who drop out of a PhD programme, who do not go to university or their university which they've registered with, and study alongside fellow PhD students. So you can share and exchange your anxieties, your progress. You feel a part of a research culture. That will give you an identity and it will motivate you on, and you will motivate others on. An additional area is the university training and support services. They will have numerous free courses on how to collect research, how to collect data, how to analyse information, but equally also think about other areas. Think about enrolling on an English language course, even if your home country is in England. Try to develop techniques, and these training courses don't just go once, you can go several times. Repeat training, particularly on data analysis, statistical data analysis. But you'll need to work with your university and your supervisors to identify the portfolio of offerings out there. Another area is when you feel as though that, well, things are getting on top of you. So you make an appointment with your supervisor and you talk to them about the difficulties you have in developing your studies. And I'll reflect back to my supervisor. My supervisor would constantly turn around and say, yes, I fully understand, but you've got to crack on. Only you can progress. So you've got to keep writing, you've got to keep reading. So how do we do this? We develop a schedule. And what I tell my supervisory students is develop a schedule Monday to Sunday, 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock. And then pepper it out. Now the green boxes will show where you have class or you have commitments during the day. The white areas are actually free areas which you can use for studying, going to the gym, watching movies, whatever you wish. But what I would suggest you do is the area blocked on a Sunday evening. You plan for your week coming and you identify what you're going to be doing on these pockets of free time. and you get a lot out of 40-minute bites rather than a 3-hour stint. I've also blocked out a Friday evening and a Saturday evening. If you're studying on a Friday or Saturday evening, you may have issues, or you may have a problem with your time management. That's when you should be out enjoying yourself. However, that leaves approximately 4 evenings during the week, 6 till 9. I would recommend nobody studies after 9 o'clock because you'll just wear down your batteries and you'll suffer fatigue. However, if we look at being accountable or honest on how we use our time, supposing you start work at 6 o'clock at the evening, on an evening, and you finish at 9 o'clock, you drift into work and you also drift out of work. So really, out of that 3-hour stint, at best, you're doing an hour and a half's work. So by identifying your schedule and pockets of free time, and you know what you're going to be doing in that 30-minute free period or 45-minute, maybe read a journal or proofreading, you'll be surprised at how much work you can produce of good quality rather than sitting down for saying, right, I'm going to study for 3 hours, when in fact, really, you're doing about an hour and a half. Students, like everyone else, we suffer from procrastination. And basically, that's sitting at the desk, you've got your PC switched on, you know what you should be doing, but you just can't connect. My advice is, stop what you're doing, go for a walk, go watch a movie, go to the gym, change of environment. But what you'll need to do is, if that's the case, you'll need to book your time out to say, right, I'm not studying or I'm not working on my research investigation. And what you'll need to do is, you'll need to try and say, right, the following evening, if you'd plan to go out, you're going to swap that round. The following evening, you're going to do the studying. So you need to be very careful of how much time you dedicate to your study. And at the end of the week, do a t-test. As in accounting, not in statistics. How many hours you've worked and how many hours you've played. And try to get that balance within that. But what I would encourage students do to avoid this, I would set yourself goals. I would encourage you to stay away from textbooks. I would get you to focus on journal papers, recent journal papers. And when you're reading, you don't just read. You make notes. And from those notes, you develop a flow diagram. So almost you've read a journal paper on your subject area and you've created this mental picture. And document that. And the more you read, the more you can add to that diagram. But you don't just add to the diagram with key themes. You make references to the journal sources which you've traced that information. And after a period of time, you'll soon realise, if you keep coming across the same subject areas, same themes, you've started to identify the core areas for your literature review. Big issue is losing your work. So what I would encourage you to do is you save your work on a USB, email it to you, save it on a hard drive, and print off the work that you're doing. So if everything else is lost, at least you've got your paper copy. But always keep a backup. Networking is very important. And this will give you the confidence to talk about your research. So your universities will have various programs, seminars, classes. Speak to the tutors and ask if you can visit the class and share your research with the student. This will give you confidence in structuring what your research is and how you're progressing. And another area that students don't do until the end, and quite often to their detriment. They start the research journey in year 1 and hopefully they complete in year 3. But during that 3-year period, they have very little evidence of impact, i.e. attending conferences, attending workshops, seminars, poster presentations. So my advice to you is from day 1, start and identify how you can demonstrate that you've created research impact. And when you come to your Viva, This will add strength onto your final submission. Treat it like a baby. You may have heard the phrase, keep thinking in the zone, where if you keep on working every day a little bit on your thesis, i.e. it never gets out of your sight, you'll make good progress within that. So treat it like a baby. Most students, towards the end, instigate proofreading. My advice is you conduct proofreading exercises from day one. However, when you come to your final write-up stage and you're ready to submit, a lot of students source proofreaders and they will go through your thesis and make corrections. My advice is be very careful who you select. I would target an English teacher and give the thesis to them to read and identify minor corrections, spellings, grammar, layout. It will be well worth you rather than identifying somebody who is a non-English specialist. Now, towards the end of the write-up, you will be asked to identify, working with your supervisors, potential panel members for your Viva. Now, what I would encourage that you do is you do your research. Do not leave it to the last minute. And if you've been networking and if you've been creating impacts, you've already developed a network of specialists. And identify a potential external examiner who could participate as part of the Viva interview. Equally, look internally within your university and identify or try to identify a suitable internal panel member for your Viva. Now, your PhD Viva, you've submitted your thesis. 6 weeks later, you will turn up for your Viva. Your panel members, which you've identified and have been accepted, will have already read your thesis. They will have already written a report. So prior to you going into the room for your Viva, both internal and external examiner, under the guidance of the chair, will exchange their reports and they will talk about your thesis. And key questions they'll be asking: is there a contribution? Is it of PhD level? And equally, are there any tangible impacts that the students has identified? And what is the reflective element in the thesis? You will be called into the Viva, bring along your thesis, possibly use post-it notes so you can make reference, and treat it like your birthday. It's your day. The panel want you to pass. So listen carefully to the questions. If you're unsure, ask them to repeat the question or make reference to your thesis. You're the expert. You wrote the thesis. And answer the questions, which will last approximately 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer. You'll be asked to leave the room. The panel will then deliberate and liaise with the chair, and the chair will then call you in and give you the result. Now, the result will be either a pass, corrections, or amendments. Now, the good thing about a Viva is, at the end of it, you know exactly what you've got to do to complete it. So if you do not pass first time, which is invariably the norm, you will be asked to do either corrections or amendments. And the time span varies between different universities. Corrections is normally about 3 months. Amendments is 6 months to 12 months. Now, my advice to students is, if you're given 3 months for your corrections, take the 3 months. Do not rush it to get it out of the way. Equally so, if you've got amendments and you've got 6 months to 12 months, take your time. Work with your supervisory team, make the changes, make the amendments, and before you submit your thesis for the second review, have a sheet of paper identifying the areas of corrections or amendments the panel have identified, and on the right-hand side, what page you've made those corrections on. So it's a quick reference. And if you do that, hopefully you will complete and you'll be part of a special club. Thank you very much.